So let's bring up the business panel. Just have before lunch we have Bill McCormac from Stockholm Property Association, Thiberg, Vasakronan, Wiberg, Jernhusen, Daniel Markström, Humlegården, Staffan, Haglind, Skanska, and we have Seth Solomonow from Bloomberg Associates, who So now let's talk business and the future cities. Very welcome, you all. Can we have some? I think most of us are quite excited about what has been said today. Can you share your your views on some of your opinions, just spontaneous reactions to what has been said?
Yeah, I can start, please. I must say I just love the presentation. It's a gorgeous presentation, isn't it? I think we have learned more or less a similar lesson, a completely different way around. We have focused a lot on really developing societies, buildings, roads and so on by making a less negative impact on the environment. At the same time, we have learned that that is not enough. We definitely need to consider also how the environment affects people. And that is exactly what Jeanette is talking about. And I think to put people at the heart of cities instead of technologies or rules or regulations or building codes, I think that is an important step forward.
So I'm sorry to present you're Staffan Haglind.
Yes, I'm Staffan Haglind at Skanska.
Yeah. So anyone else?
Yeah, we're talking about...
Can you say who you are?
Okay, Thiberg from Vasakronan, a large property company in Sweden. We talked a lot about density and the importance of the density in cities. And then England said that if we will raise density, we have to use the small spots of green grass we have left. But I think we not forget that as a property owner, each time we carry through larger investments in our properties, we raise a number of working stations in our properties, maybe 50 or 100% in the existing buildings. At the same time, people get more and more used to share space. So I think we have a great highness of the density without building new buildings. I should not forget about that.
I realize now that we have some kind of a gender issue here in the panel. So, Anne, please.
Well, my name is Anne. I'm working for the Jernhusen, a real estate company with tenants in the transport sector, Central Station in Stockholm, the Central Station area. I think this was really interesting to listen. Since we really know how important it is to prioritize the traveler and the visitor when you come by public transportation system. You don't have any car. You come to the city, and then it's very important to reach the city in an efficient way and in an easy way. So walkable areas that increase the rents, and it's very good. I think it was very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I've followed Jeanette for a long time. Billy McCormac from the Stockholm Property Association. One thing that I kind of missed from this story, though, is the people, the community groups, the businesses, and other people that got involved in reshaping part of New York. And I think they're like an important part of this story. Times Square Alliance was a group that got really involved in reshaping that whole area. And I think that when we're going to be out today and looking at these various workshops, you're going to see a lot of community groups that are getting involved in urban planning and city development. And I think this is something that we need to promote, and we need to make sure that we're being responsive to that need. And I think that a lot of the projects that we've seen that have garnered a lot of NIMBY attention, a lot of negative press, has been a result of the fact that people felt powerless. They don't feel like they're a part of the process. They don't feel like they're involved enough in these projects and how their city is being shaped. And I think that this is something that we should not overlook when we're discussing these things. I think that just, I would be a terrible lobbyist if I didn't promote Pallis which is going to be one of the workshops today. But this is a park that is primarily the result of going around, knocking on doors, talking to people who live in the area where we want to build this pop-up park, talking to businesses, and they're extremely shocked and surprised that anybody wants to include them in this discussion at all. But when you start talking to them, then they start saying, but I'd love to do something. I can be a part of this. I can donate a little bit of my time. I can donate, whatever, building materials and things like that. We need to make sure that these people feel like they're a part of the discussion.
All right.
I don't really agree. I think people are very involved in our projects, at least.
Okay, so then we have something.
I want to add one more thing. Is that I think that the controversy is actually a sign that you're doing something right, and that you're asking the right questions, and that people are contemplating a different kind of future, and people are feeling empowered that they can grasp and that the streets belong to them. Because I think this stuff is very important. It's not just about infrastructure. It's about the way that the city works for people. It's about the future of the city and what kind of future that you want to have. I should add that I'm Seth Solomonow.
Yes.
I've had the privilege of working with Jeanette Sadikhan for the last 7 years, and we experienced a lot of controversy. And it was absolutely worth it. And these fights are worth having. These debates are worth fighting to the end, but the results are important, and having the change in your hands on the street is vital. You have to be able to change the street and have something for people to respond to and to expand to other parts of the city.
I couldn't agree more, and I think the change need to happen on different levels. My name is Daniel Markström. I'm head of architecture at Humlegården Real Estate, and Jeanette showed us wonderfully how much change you can accomplish with a few gallons of paint and some lawn chairs or beach chairs. But the conflict is always that you have all the departments that need to work together, and you have this long term, and there's a lot of bureaucracy, and that process needs to move on as well. But I think I would like to introduce the word skunk works, which is a term I think was defined by Lockheed Martin in the Second World War, where basically, according to, you take a group of small people, and you take them out of their normal working environment and give them exceptional freedom from their organization and their standard and the bureaucracy they normally live in. So I would love if the mayor here of Stockholm would take bright people from different departments, or Ingela, for example, put them together in a special task force, give them huge mandates, an obscenely large budget, and basically with only the direction that change will be the only constant. And as Jeanette said, if it doesn't work, take it back. We need to figure out new stuff.
Yeah.
But just one thing, and I wasn't saying that businesses that that you guys aren't talking to your people. I'm saying that some people don't feel like they're included in, I think, a lot of the transportation projects. If you go and talk to people at Götgatan about how they feel about what's going on there, there's not a lot of people who feel like they were really involved in those decisions being made. And I think a lot of real estate developers and primarily commercial, but also residential, are really good about talking to the people who are living in their buildings and the people who are renting from them. I think more it's just a kind of a power dynamic between politics and bureaucrats and people. I think it's getting better all the time, but I just notice when we're out talking to people, they feel a bit like they're not really part of that conversation.
So I'm just so it's great. You're already you're at it, but I would like to say that to emphasize that also you have a role to play as well. And what are your responsibilities? I'm thinking, for example, Anne. What are you going to do to change the city? What are do you think that you as one of the players here?
Well, I think it's important to dense the city in a smart way and to use the public transportation and to integrate the communication hub better to the city with a nice environment, attractive environment, with good facilities around shops and work offices, and make it easier for people to travel from their home to their work, or vice versa, and sort of link the different parts of the city together with nice, attractive areas, walkable areas.
So there seems to be a little bit focus on the inner city. We were very taken within it. We see these dense environments, but I'm thinking, for example, Per, what about suburban centers? I mean, what to do with just, you know, to do with outside? What to do to do with suburbia and that kind of transformation?
Well, Vasakronan has worked quite focused on the inner city, of course, and with the suburbs, and talking about the shopping centers and so on, more like complement or a competitor to us, of course. So, but I think we have a traffic situation in Stockholm, so of course we have had living suburbs too, so they can live their own lives, of course. But I want to say one thing too. A large company like Vasakronan sometimes maybe think too much about large investments to make changes, and we forget about the small changes. And we was, of course, very impressed of this speech we had before, and we thought, what could we do right now, not just thinking or talking about it. So we decided maybe 2 weeks ago to open up our terrace around the Jernhusen in Stockholm City. We own 4 of the not so high-rising buildings in Stockholm called Jernhusen. And there's been a terrace around them since the building was raised, but now we decided to open them for everybody that wants to go there. And we're not going to do any investment at all. We just put some chairs and some food trucks on the terrace. So, I mean, sometimes you miss a small important change you can do instead of just watching the big investments.
Mm. Yes, Staffan?
Yeah, when it comes to suburbia and the Stockholm bypass that has been up for discussion here a couple of times, we have actually suggested to make the Stockholm bypass not just a brown car traffic road, but instead really a smart way for mass transit by using a train of buses, eco buses, going from the south of Stockholm through Stockholm bypass up to the north of Stockholm, to be able for people to transport efficiently and eco-friendly, and at the same time allow a lot of new homes for people in places where it's not possible to build today. So I think we can arrange for good transportation and a lot of new homes in the Stockholm area at the same time. And we're also more than willing to finance it, so we don't have to wait for the tax financing of all these investments. We are more than happy to invest in it, and a lot of pension funds and so on. So I think we can be an important part of the solution to these issues.
Okay, so now we're coming into financial issues. I was hoping to take that last bit. Anyone else has an idea? Just so we don't forget suburbia. I mean that has been said today. That's maybe one of the biggest challenges in terms of car dependency and walkability and so on.
Yeah, if I can just add something, I think it's really important that if we want to have a more dense future, if we want to have people concentrated in certain areas, the investment strategy really needs to follow from that. So instead of sort of following where the people are going, I think you need to invest where you want the people to be. And what Jeanette just said to your last question about being anti-car, it really is about being pro-choice and providing people options so people can get to the city center or will be more likely to stay there. Or providing options so that sprawl doesn't sort of take over entire regions. You can't just sort of tell people not to move to the suburbs because it's cheaper or because it provides a quality of life that they prefer. You have to create the kind of quality of life in the city that you want to see. You have to create the transportation options in the city, the walkability options. You have to make an attractive option so people will want to move there and create the economy of scale that you see there. Urban environments tend to be much more economically productive, and they have a way of operating that's much more efficient. But that's something you can't really wish for or something that you can't sort of hope for. You have to design for it, and it really starts with the structure of the street. So I think you're seeing what a lot of the world-class cities around the world are doing is they're investing in this. They're repopulating downtowns. In the United States in particular, a lot of downtowns, they were ghost towns for a long time. And you're seeing a reverse trend where lots of places are creating destinations and taking streets as valuable real estate and taking them very seriously. And New York City is one example of that, but cities around the world are really innovating on this. It's very exciting, and there's a lot of energy that goes on with living in a city that urban planners are just beginning to wake up to.
So is it because I don't think this is known to, especially to the Swedish audience or to planners, the community, that is it correct that people in the US are moving back downtown, and that
there are some trends where that's happening. So in big cities like Los Angeles, where downtown is, it was vital maybe 50 years ago if you saw the old police dramas. But more recently, a lot of the theaters had gone under. There's big open parking lots where there used to be buildings, and the entire orientation of the city was built around the car for the last half century. So places like that throughout the Midwest, lots of American cities, you're seeing population shifts back towards the centers. So you can't take it for granted. You have to expect that and this global competition for people and ideas and talent, that they're going to want to live in places that are worth moving to.
Yeah,
I mean, I think, you also need to think about what people want besides somewhere to live. All the amenities, all the shops, all the services, the proximity to public transportation, to green areas and things like that. I mean, I know you guys have also analyzed this. What is it that people want? What do they find attractive? And then you need to make sure that all these other areas outside of the city center are also, how do we promote those things that people find attractive, and not just make them bedroom communities?
Yeah, I want to bring up a very difficult question for you guys. I want us to speak about parking. Because parking is a complex thing, and we know, as we were speaking with the politicians, it messes up our environments and also makes housing less affordable. So how can you, as developers and property owners, work with parking, decrease parking? You could decide also this. You have power of this issue. Skanska?
Yes, please. Yeah, actually, we develop both office buildings but also homes. And it's not quite often that we build large garages because we just have to do it. And we can't lease them out. So there are no cars, but the garage is still built. That is really bad business for us. So we would like to make less garage and more places for people to walk or go by bike. And then the homes and the office buildings will also become so much cheaper because building garage is just bad business. So I think we can do two good things at the same time. We can also allow for electric cars, and we can also have carpools, which we have tried out in a few projects. So we can do a lot as well. But we need to be allowed to do differently by the politicians. Now they sometimes make it mandatory for us to build too many garage places, and that is not good.
Well, of course, I can agree with what you said. And today we could say we have a lot of properties in Stockholm City, and the amount of the parking spaces for us is not an issue, I would say. We have very few parking spaces, and there is no problem for us at all. And as you said, we offer all our customers, of course, a part of a carpool, and it's more and more important to have good locker rooms for the cyclists too. So I think this is something it's getting better and better, and the problem is less and less, I would say.
So Anne, you're working transit-oriented developments. How do you think about this?
Yes, I think it's very important to have a seamless system. You need some parking lots, of course, but that's not the big issue for us in Stockholm, at least.
Daniel, do you have?
No, I think we need to present alternatives. When we do new developments, usually it's the municipality who have regulations how many parking spaces we are demanded to have. And that's always a discussion, and it becomes how close we are to public transportation. It can be a discussion, and we recently completed a very large office building in just outside central Stockholm, where we had this discussion because it was in Sundbyberg, the very central, and with the tenant, we had a discussion how much biking we should have, and they had an idea, and we actually made the bike garage bigger, and they were afraid that people wanted to bring the car, but when they found out how easy it was to bring the bike, and that they could actually, utilize the changing room and get a good shower and get exercise, get sweaty on your way to work, it became a huge success, and we had to increase the number of bike parkings, and we had to help the tenant with lockers so they could bring, the suits, and then, so it became a real trend. And you can say they had speed bikes, and we had to increase the lockers because, people are buying very expensive bikes today. So it was, I think we can do a lot.
Yeah. I'd like to pick up on that because echoing what we were just talking about before, that your investment strategy sort of sets what the development will be. I firmly believe that if you you get what you build for, and that if you build a lot of parking lots, you're basically guaranteeing you're going to have a lot of car traffic, or you're at least providing for that capacity. A lot of this is, in fact, the result of parking minimums that lots of cities have. And one example that we're familiar with is in Mexico City, where they expect every time you build a new building that you're going to have X number of cars come with the development, depending on the square footage, and it requires basically building buildings of parking lots. So taken to its extreme, this creates lots of development problems. I think instead, if you develop and create a infrastructure for the kind of development that you want to see by siting businesses near transit or siting transit near where the development you want to occur, you can help ameliorate some of that. But the policy shouldn't dictate the infrastructure. It should be the other way around.
So I just want to do a follow-up question for an issue that we talked about earlier, because everyone seems to agree that it's good with participation, collaboration, everyone should have their saying and so on, but still you are commercial actors here. I mean, what are the risks of, how can you deal with, who is actually deciding what? I mean, Seth, we have the Timescale Alliance, but they can't decide everything, how to balance.
Honestly, our community partners were really the best partners we had. Government is good at lots of things, but it really takes, the expression takes a village. People who live in an area, they know their streets and their neighborhoods better than the government does. I think government works best when it can help empower people in a community, and it can actually open up the door to the kinds of developments that we want to see. I think maybe the issue is also one of conflict, that you say, you can't sort of open up the door for everybody, so who gets to participate? I think that we've done more, and you see technology also helping it open up the door of the public process more than it ever has been before. And I think you're seeing a really lively discussion, lots of debate, lots of controversy. I think these are all actually really healthy signs that you're like I said, we're moving in the right direction. But at the end of the day, these are all long-term projects. It's not just about one project and delivering it. It's about sustaining it for years and years and making sure it's healthy, that you have healthy public spaces, that you have healthy public plazas. And I think the communities are really best organized to do that. And we did a lot of work with them. So I can't say enough about how important that is. You will not succeed unless you have a good community partner.
Okay, anyone?
Yeah, I would say that you also, of course, try to understand what people want, so what they don't want to. We just finished a study in front of me. It's here. We finished a study, and the report we're going to release is today. And we have made, I think, we asked 2,000 people different questions, what they want or what they don't want. And one of the questions we asked them if they wanted to be involved into the plan process in the cities, and they all, or the development of the cities, and most of them want to, but nobody knows how to do it. I think that's a chance for us to take, because they are the real experts, so can we have a better dialogue with them? We'll have better answers of what they want. Yeah,
Staffan, you open up the thing of financing. And, you said already that you would be interested in co-financing infrastructure, or maybe the redevelopment of streets and so on. But how could you cope with that challenge in terms of deciding what actually has to be done and so on?
Yeah, I think it comes to the procedure of deciding how we're going to develop our society, I think we need to go from the situation today, where a lot of people and organizations have negative things very late on in the process, meaning it escalates and it becomes appealed to court by court by court and time goes by. I think we need to engage those people much earlier in the process so we get some good concrete discussions to really find a good path forward instead of these negative appeal processes that where we are today. When it comes to public-private financing, there are abundant of capital to invest in Swedish infrastructure. There are so many good things to do that we can't do today because we don't have enough funding to do it. So if we are more willing to let companies and funds really do these things for us, invest in infrastructure like in mass transit, in hospitals, in trains or roads, things can be put in place so much quicker and add value to Sweden, to grow Sweden much faster and much better than we can today. So I think this is a tool that we don't use in Sweden, but is very frequently used in many, many countries across the world. Usually very, very efficient and very successful.
So Billy, do you have any comment on the pros and the cons of this to public partnerships and co-funding?
We've seen some examples already. There's been a subway station that was financed by a real estate company out to the new arena just outside the city. And I think that these are things that we're going to be experimenting with going forward. There is this government inquiry underway, Sverige Förhandlingen, that is looking at different ways to approach these big major challenges and public-private partnerships. So I think we're going to see some interesting things coming out of that, but there's no cut and dry way of looking at it. But I think that there is just the insight that there is just not enough taxpayer money to go around for all of these projects is very important. I think that I just would like to go back to this report that Per was talking about. I think it's extremely important. I think it's one thing that we really need to take away from these kinds of discussions, that it's very, it's great that we are all talking about these things and that we talk to politicians and to people working in the various agencies and departments and so forth. But I really think we need to figure out a better way to include people in these kinds of discussions that are going on around them. And there's rules and regulations and all kinds of things that they don't understand and that are standing in the way of them getting involved. And I think we need to start breaking down those barriers and figuring out ways, to make them more included in this conversation. I don't know what you say, Per, about this, but.
Sorry. We're running out of time, so I would just put the last question. I'm sorry. Could you something short?
I would say, of course, I agree with that. And I think what's happening in New York, I suppose, is that people who are there understand more how to be involved in the process. When you do such things, I mean, things that people can see, they understand, maybe they can be a part of it. I think that's easy.
Just one last question to Seth, because you have this outside perspective, which is very interesting. So based on what has been said here today, you've heard all these people. What would be your advice to the developers, politicians, and planners of Stockholm? And how can we get to collaborate and change the future together?
That's an easy question. But after New York City, maybe this is easy. No, probably not. So I think that when it gets to infrastructure and transportation, these are really sort of the essential questions of cities. It's existential. It's not just about infrastructure and building a bridge or building roads or transit. You're dealing with the future of the city, its economy. You're dealing with social change and mobility, social mobility. You're changing people's lives by making decisions about how you use your streets. So this stuff is really important. And we discovered, it wasn't just about the controversies that were in the headlines each day, that we were really changing people's minds. So I think the process is really important. And it's as important as the decision you ultimately make. It's important that everybody has their say and that you air it out and that you fight about it. But I can't say, you can argue too much about it. It's important in the end to make a decision. But how you make that decision will affect how future people, in the future, people think about making the same kind of decision. So when you look at your streets, I think it's important to think, is this street serving everybody who uses it? Is it easy to get around if you're old or young? Is it safe? I think it's an essential question that a lot of cities don't really ask. Is this really the safest thing that we could be doing for our city? And does it, is it simple and easy to use? And if you start following those kinds of planning principles, I think the future looks a lot different than it does right now. And we're kind of living, it's sort of like living archaeology. You're looking, the way your street is structured now is the way that somebody thought it should be 50, 100 years ago. So the question is, when you're making these decisions now, what do you want people to look back on and say, this is what they thought about the future would look like at this point in time? And it's that important, and I think it should be taken that seriously.
Thank you so much. So we will end up, as we did with the other panels, as a quick voting on the scenarios to keep the thread here. So, anyone from Free City? Tech City? Eco City?
Can we split the vote? Get the JSK City? Anybody?
So, thank you so much. I want to thank you, everybody. Yeah, a hand of applause. Thank you, the speakers, the panel members. I want to thank our sponsors. I want to thank especially Karen, the conference, head of conference organization, and also, you, the audience, of course. Now it's time for lunch. After lunch is workshops, and you take your lunch from the food trucks outside at Mosebacke Torg. You use your food truck ticket, then you go to your workshop host, which has a number, signage, and you have also a map of where the hosts are in your program. So see you all back here at Södra Bar at 5 p.m. for the after work, and hope you all have a wonderful day here in walkable Stockholm. I'm so happy to have you here. Thank you so much.